Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody tuning into another Supatease PvP guide. And in this one, we're going to be going through Restoration Druid against a Shadow Priest Balanced Druid. And the main idea of this is how to deal with wizards, how to deal with spread pressure, which means multiple teammates taking damage at the same time, how you want to position, how you want to manage your healing outputs, and just generally how to deal with this composition because it is very popular and you will see it a lot. So in this example, I am playing with an Enhancement Shaman, an Arms Warrior, and I'm playing the Turbo Cleave. So I want to be playing very far away from my teammates at a pillar. However, at the start of the game, because I can get a bit of a sneak attack, I will move in stealth and look to bash and try to cyclone. Now, my teammates need to try and help me cover, but in this situation, they did not. So in this situation, using a Stormbolt on the Balanced Druid to deny Solar Beam would have allowed me to get that cyclone. But you can see already from making that aggressive move, I got put really far behind, and I am playing Tree of Life because it is basically the same thing as a Balanced Druid's incarnation, and you can press it when they press theirs, and with Innervate activated and the Honor Talent Nourish, you can see that the Shaman is trying to purge HOTS, but I apply 2 HOTS at the same time with Regrowth being instant cast, and it allows me to effectively deal with this incarnation without having to use too many defensive cooldowns or potentially losing the game. So I prefer running the Tree of Life versus Balanced Druids, especially ones that play with Restoration Shamans, just to go 1-for-1 with their incarnation and to deny any purges. After the incarnation is down, that is typically when you want to start getting more aggressive again, and your initiation is with, like I said, bash. That's coming up in another 2 seconds, so I would like to be using that onto a target as soon as possible and as frequently as possible to develop pressure. But we used Storm Bolts on the Shaman and got Dispersion from the Priest, so that stun alone was more than enough. And now I will need to wait for diminishing returns. But while their Solar Beam is on cooldown, or at least it was on my Gladius or my Omnibet there, I was looking for a Cyclone. Unfortunately, it got denied there because of the misinformation I was given. But generally speaking, when interrupts are not available, you would like to look for Cyclones. You can also use Iron Bark during this time to make your partner more stable. So in this case, the warrior was being focused down. I looked for Cyclones and used Iron Bark to stall the damage while I wasn't healing. But I'm also now spending a lot of time not healing and really not getting a clone. My partner then uses Stormbolt, which could have been timed a bit better as I had already worked through a lot of the interrupts. I did not necessarily need that Stormbolt to chain into clone. And it was kind of at this point in this match, because I have not played much Resto Druid in BFA, that I realized cloning isn't too valuable. Now, I gave you a couple of ways to look to Cyclone, but getting a Cyclone is just not that high impact anymore, especially if you're playing with 2 melee cleave classes. It would be just much better for you to stay at the pillar, max ranged, maximizing your healing outputs, and it would just generally be the better decision. So after realizing that, I start playing a lot more passive and hang around the corner. I generally have Life Bloom on the warrior because his defensive cooldown is a lot longer than the Astral Shift of the Shaman. So if they burst the Shaman down with no Life Bloom, he can make a trade more frequently, and I'm more afraid of the warrior dying during that exposed moment. Here I saw Intimidating Shout on the Shaman, and I used Bash to deny the Moonkin from peeling and using Cyclone. It is important to use your team's crowd controls at the same time to deny any of the partners on the opposing team from helping them. Now in this position, we're fairly even on mana, but we have a lot more pressure, and my main focus is to have my team not play defensive. Another thing that I do with my healing is the target that has the Life Bloom is usually not the target that I Swift Mend, especially when 2 targets are taking this much damage. So for example, my Shaman has Life Bloom. I am more inclined to use Swift Mend on my warrior, and you may be wondering why. It's because it applies Grove Tending, which is an extra heal over time effect, and splits the healing evenly between 2 targets. So I Swift Mended the warrior while Life Bloom was on the Shaman. This way they both have the same incoming healing and will remain relatively at the same health pool. And I try to do that throughout the entire fight to maximize my HPS. Now Bash is becoming available. I see that the Balanced Druid doesn't have a trinket very soon, so I desperately wanted to get that Bash in before he got his trinket, but he was able to catch me with a Bash of his own, and this is why making an aggressive move is usually a high risk one with not necessarily that much reward. Now you can see Incarnation has been used from their Druid, and I should use Tree of Life in this position, but again, not having played Resto Druid very much in BFA, and not actually being used to playing Tree of Life, as it's a talent that you did not typically take, I somehow make it through this Incarnation without using Tree of Life for quite some time. And I would never suggest that you do this. You 100% want to use Tree of Life and do your best to then pair that up with Incarnation. But because I didn't use Tree of Life, my partners had to use their own personal defensives, Astral Shift and Die by the Sword as the primary ones. It was then at this moment I realized that I had not used Tree of Life, I believe, and you'll see how easily it is that you will recover, and that's why it's so important to bring against a Balanced Druid, because you can effectively nullify the damage in the match for a 30-second period of time. It's very powerful, and I would definitely recommend it. Make sure you're taking the Nourish Honor talent along with it. And if we look at the position of this game overall, we have a lot of pressure. We are winning on a mana. I think that I could have taken a more defensive posture against this composition and not exposed myself as much as I had. I did think as a Druid that I needed to be going for clones because that's what my class brings as its niche, but generally speaking, it may not be worth the risk. In this position, I do ultimately finally get one, well timed out of a Storm Bolt with the exact duration, and because I was able to get that Cyclone, we got Void Shift. So the Shadow Priest switched his health with the Balanced Druid, which is a 5-minute cooldown, very big, and you're likely to only see it used once in a game. So in that case right there, Cyclone was of high value. But we were winning the game on mana and pressure, and to go for a risky play like that just means that we are more likely to lose. And I would say that going for those risky plays is something you should do more so in kind of desperation. The game's about to end, you're losing on mana, you're losing on the cooldown front, and your pressure is low. It's like, we need a clone or nothing's gonna happen. In this position, I use Tranquility behind the pillar here to line of sight interrupts, stack up an extra heal over time effect to increase my overall healing. Then I go back to maintaining my hots, and as I said, unless the target is guaranteed to die, like in this case I am a bit worried about my Shaman dying, I may Swiftmend him, but you would like to use Swiftmend on the other target to space it out against a comp like this where your two partners are taking relatively the same amount of damage throughout the fight, so you can maximize your efficiency and extend your mana as long as possible. So as this match is coming to a close here, just want to go over, trade your Tree of Life for the Incarnation of the Boomkin. That's the smartest move that you can make. You will basically nullify the damage of the game. You never want to overlap Iron Bark with Astral Shift or Die by the Sword, so always call that out when pressure is starting to get high. You may want to use that during Incarnation. You may want to use that when you think the Balanced Druid is moving in to stun you or the Shadow Priest is moving in to stun you, so you activate it preemptively before you get stunned to reduce incoming damage. And generally you should be looking for a defensive posture when you're playing with two melee classes like this against two casters. Unless it's guaranteed that you'll get the crowd control, which is very unlikely, it's generally not worth the risk, especially if you're a beginner Resto Druid. I wouldn't suggest it. Kind of work your way into that over time, pick your moments. Other than that, I hope that this guide is of some assistance to you, and I will see you in the next one. If you enjoyed this and you want to see more content, make sure that you click the subscribe button and the notification bell, as I am doing my best to put out a guide every single day for you guys to watch on as many specializations as I can get my hands on. So hopefully one day, or I'll hit your spec. Otherwise, you can learn a lot about your enemies from just watching from a different perspective. So I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.